Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Agoge TV with me, your host Phil Leonard.
And I'm your host, Josh Summersgill.
He's found a pose, the lad. On today's show, we have Matthew Heaton, affectionately known as Big Matt. Obviously, most people who come to our gym will know Matt as one of the PTs that uses our gym on a regular basis. And today we're going to explore a little bit more about that. Matt is involved in a lot of high-level sport, including Warrington Wolves women's team, who recently won the league, I believe, and also Cheshire Netball. I know that's his most recent things, but he's coached at a decent level for a very long time since coming out of uni. So we're going to be in for a nice chat with Matt today to find out a little bit more about him. So, Matt, first things first, how did you sorry, the words. I'm looking at the wrong show notes. That's why that's good. So, tell us a bit more about how you got into CrossFit, what your sporting background is before CrossFit, and basically how you got into coaching.
So, I grew up playing football and rugby. Enjoyed rugby more. Was good at football, but obviously I'm a little bit big for a footballer. Played a lot with my brother, who was a few years older than me, so I was able to compete with people who were like 3 years older than me. So when I went back to playing against my age, the level was a lot slower. So I probably seemed better at football than what I was. Enjoyed rugby just because I enjoyed trying to bash people. Went off to college. Actually went to college later on in life. I didn't go straight after school. It was a bit of a challenging teenager, we'll call it. Did a BTEC in Warrington Collegiate in sports coaching, I think it was. And then people just sort of said, do you reckon you'd be able to take it further? Would you want to go further? I really enjoyed the sort of coaching aspect of my sort of college course. Went off to Manchester Met Uni in Crewe and Alsager. Did a 3-year undergraduate degree in exercise science. Got a first class degree in that. And it was only really at MMU where I actually met real athletes. I'd never really trained in a gym before. I'd been to sort of global gyms in Warrington and I'd sort of gone in there, no real structured program, never really met anyone. My first week there, I got signed up to the rugby team. Met a fella called Ross Parkin, who was my sort of first introduction to what I would class as a savage athlete. A lot of my friends who will end up watching this will know Ross. And Ross also was the first person who introduced me to CrossFit coming out of uni.
Right, okay.
At uni on our degree, we had to study a lot in gyms, but it was very different. It was more the science aspect, a lot of testing. We started off looking more down the exercise route for like NHS referrals, but I always knew that I wanted to work in high-end sport, but for some strange reason chose to follow exercise science rather than sports science. After that, played rugby at uni for the 4 years I was there. Met again, and that's where I really started to meet top-end athletes. We had people training there who were real savages, but in different sports. So we had a strong lad called Shane, Irish lad training for strongman events. A lad called James Francis, just another savage of an athlete who sort of got me into a sort of competitive mode. Because I was always competitive, but it's only when you meet other people that you realise what level you're actually at, if that makes sense. You always think you're the best until you meet someone who's better, and then you think, okay, I can sort of go up another level here.
Yeah.
And I think that was what I also found with my studies, because I never ever thought I'd do. I got condoned passes on my first 2 years of uni, but I was playing rugby and I was scraping through. Bust my knee at the end of my second year, so I had like my knee rebuilt. Yeah. And going into third year, our last sort of read me the right act, told me to sort of calm down a little bit on the partying. Coached, I think it was my first year of proper coaching, was going into third year. I was playing and coaching the women's rugby union team.
Right.
And I think we went the whole season unbeaten. We won the league and cup double. And I'd never even played rugby union. I just offered to coach the rugby union team, because I thought tackling, passing, like they didn't really have a proper coach at the time, and I just enjoyed coaching. I enjoyed being involved, and because I knew I wasn't going to play that much that year, because I started the year in a leg brace, so that was my first real introduction to coaching, was women's rugby union in my third year, and then stayed on at uni, got a first class degree somehow, got offered a scholarship for basically a free master's if I wanted to stay on and study again. So I did my master's in exercise physiology with science of sports injury.
Yeah.
That was probably my favourite year because we really got to go into like a lot of, as you can imagine, sort of in-depth testing at the university. It was that year that you start getting offered a lot more sort of opportunities to get involved with teams. So I worked with one of the PhD students on the talented Olympic athlete program for the Staffordshire area. So we basically got 10 random athletes in that we didn't know what sport they played when they were turning up on the day. We just got told we had to put them through a series of batch testing. And that was sort of the luckiest thing that I ever volunteered for. Because once I'd come out of that, we got used to setting up testing gates and just using different bits of equipment. And because I tried to volunteer as much as I could to get as much experience as I could, it sort of served me better later on in life when I got an opportunity at Warrington Wolves. Yeah. Got offered a chance at Warrington Wolves, got offered a scholarship, and one day one of the interns never turned up. And it was a day we were doing, so I think we were doing some kind of speed testing. There was something going on and something needed setting up that I knew how to do, basically from volunteering on the Masters.
Right.
And I said, look, I've set that equipment up before. I'm quite confident I could do that. And they're like, okay, you're the new kid, but off you go. And that was with the under-16 scholarship. And sort of from there, really, just kept progressing and kept getting opportunities just by putting myself about and wanting to learn more. Yeah. So, yeah, and then after that, obviously coaching Warrington Wolves under-16s. That's where I met, obviously, Deck and a lot of other good lads who've gone on to play first team. At the same time, Cheshire Netball. I actually got asked to cover a session by one of my friends because she was going to Australia, and turned up, did 2 sessions because she was away, and then didn't do anything for a month because she'd come back. She took her job back over, and then they rang me and said, look, we want you to take over, basically. Are you okay doing that? Like, she's on about leaving for a master's, and never coached netball before, but I just thought, okay, from what I've learned of basic principles of coaching, I could take over. I could offer something to the team. Yeah. So yeah, it was coaching rugby, coaching netball, and it was an interesting position to find myself in, like post uni, because I was talking to a lot of my friends who had sort of finished uni and were doing nothing, and yeah, I was really fortunate to be presented with some good opportunities.
Yeah, so that, I think it's really cool, like, just to unpack that a little bit. Obviously, the first thing to explain is where you met Deck, which is my nephew, which is one of the reasons, not the reason we know each other, because obviously we met going CrossFit, but like mutual acquaintance. My nephew, he was playing for Warrington Wolves under-16s at the time, wasn't he? And so that definitely kept me and Matt in touch, even when we probably didn't see as much of each other because of not being able to train CrossFit Warrington. The other thing being that, like, I think the take-home message that people should get from that is that you put yourself out there, and in our industry, it's very few and far between that you're fortunate enough to actually say, like, to just walk into, you don't just walk into a job. You have to do shit. You have to do a lot of shit for free, and be willing to go and learn people and put yourself out there, to get you start, don't you? Like, and I think it's
massive
for any coaches that are listening to this, or anybody who's interested in being a coach. Like, that's a big lesson for you to learn. Like,
100%.
It might.
I think it's when I was at uni. Yeah, we used to sort of get fed this sort of false pretense that when you were when you're going to leave uni, you're going to walk into a job. And even in my head, like, I'd been built up that much in my head. Like, I was coming out of a first-class degree, a master's degree. I'd smashed everything. I was like, teams are going to want to employ me straight away. And then you leave uni and you're like, okay, there's actually hundreds of people out here with near enough the same qualification as me, and some without as good a qualification, but more years of sort of on-the-job coaching. Yeah. And then it's starting literally at the bottom. So I was doing Monday, Wednesday, Saturday religiously every week for the under-16s. And I never missed a session. And at that time, I think there was like 5 or 6 interns with the 16s. And I can remember like every week, there'd be like 1 or 2 of them missing.
Yeah.
I'd be like, nah, like in my head, I just, for the kind of person that I am, like it used to really bother me that people would be missing from sessions and they weren't up to date. And, you know, that really paid off as well, because eventually I got the opportunity to go to the under-19s.
Yeah.
And yeah, I started to get a little bit of paid work with the under-19s. And again, it was only a small contract, but you're still being paid for something that you enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So again, like none of the coaching that I ever do is really work. Like you're getting paid for a hobby. I'm sure you fellas as well can compare what you do now to other jobs that you've had, and you essentially get paid to do a hobby. I love coaching, like all the long, stupid hours that I do. Like, it doesn't bother me. And even like now, I have to drive from Pontefract. So on a good day, it's an hour and 20 in the car. To come over on a Sunday, I'll coach my different athletes, and then I'll drive an hour and 20 back. And a lot of people would see that as an issue, but I just see it as just under 3 hours of like podcasts and e-learning, listening to audio books. And then actually the fun stuff is driving. Like the worst part of my day is the hour 20 drive. And in that time, I just use it to try and listen to something or learn something new. And that's why I go off on like random tangents when people can tell I'm reading a new book or listening to a new book, when like a random topic starts getting brought up. And I'm like, he's gone to a new Audible.
You say this now. I've just started a new book. Why zebras don't get ulcers or something like that. So like
random book title I've ever heard.
Yeah, and you know what? It's really like I can't even go into it properly because I don't understand half of it at the minute. But like I'm sure it's all going to come together.
I love stuff like that.
It's a 13-hour book. That, you know what I mean? So I'm like and a minute, like I've got the time to literally put it on and just listen to it.
Yeah.
I put it on, put it on Audible while I'm yes. I'm not gonna lie. Yesterday, Cora went home and lay in the back garden, and I just lay there listening to a book for an hour. Do you know what I mean? So
it's really good as well. Just some downtime. I think my life is so weird at the minute because of how much I enjoy what I do. Like I'm either 100% or 0%.
Yeah.
Like there's never a sort of in between. Like, I'm either flying around the country with my jobs or sat on the sofa watching some of the most ridiculous TV or listening to a book, which most people would listen to and think, what's going on? Like there's never sort of a bit of a medium.
Yeah. I think again the point is though that you turn the times that are like obstacles, or we talk about turning obstacles into opportunities all the time. You turn the things that are potentially negatives to most people into a positive, and like you say, you that goes back to what we were saying about coaching. Like you start off with, you know what, I'm gonna coach for free because I love it, and I'm gonna get as much experience as I can and learn as much as I can. And again, then you find out that you got to drive an hour and a half every day to coach. Like,
massive.
Instead of saying, oh shit, I've got to do this I'm wasting 3 hours out of my weekend. It's okay. I've got 3 hours to learn something new and get better at my craft as such. So
I've always tried to do that, and I always think like when I left uni, because I knew I wasn't going to play rugby because my knee injury sort of took its toll, and like there's that long-standing joke for those who know me from CrossFit, I don't run. I despise running. But for me, like running, just repeated thudding on the floor, like my knee just does not like it. And yeah, I complain it sometimes, but when we first joined CrossFit Warrington, like that was where that was the first time I'd been properly coached as well. If that like with people from exercise, and I'd been given technique on exercise, because even like I look at the way I trained at uni, and like some of the numbers I used to lift there, and I look at and think about the technique and the way I used to do it, and you cringe. And where we all met, so CrossFit Warrington, when we first met people, and for me, I knew I was stopping playing rugby, and I'm quite a competitive person, so I needed to fill that void, and I knew, quite zero training, but we'll sign up for a competition and just jump in and see what happens. But again, that was where I started to meet like different people who took training seriously, and that was the sort of next level of like, I mean, I'm sure you guys remember, because it was weird because I had sort of Andy and Tom Blay, like them two were the first, but then the Ninjas joined, so then you guys joined, and Edgley came along, and like every few months there was this wave of people who would join, and the bar was just always being raised. And then I'd obviously be training with them on a Saturday, but watching what the ninjas were doing, and I'd be like, okay, these guys are just completely different as to what's going on over here. So what's going on over there? And I still remember getting Josh involved in his first ever WOD. Honest to God, I can remember his face during it, like before.
Was that the one that me and you did? Was it wall balls and rowing?
Yeah, obviously it was. If I'm involved, of course it was wall balls and rowing.
I was going to say,
shit, it was awful.
And I just remember the finishing it, and it was just a psychotic look. Yeah.
I'm in the corner doing a stalder press, and fucking Matt wants me doing wall balls and rowing.
But again, it was just that environment that we created, and it was just so. It was, but that's what I thrived on. I loved the competitive element, and I like being good at things, but I don't mind being bad. Like, and I enjoy trying to learn off other people, and I think I learned a lot then, and that was my first introduction to CrossFit.
Yeah.
And then I think I've spent, trying to work it out last night, I'd probably say 5 different CrossFit gyms I've spent like a prolonged amount of time where I could say I've been a member.
Yeah.
And in every CrossFit gym, like the way the coaches are so different.
Yeah.
Like there's no 2 CrossFits that I've ever been involved in long term that have ever been the same. And that's where I've started to learn more about, like, there's a difference between coaches and exercise leaders. And there's a massive difference in that. And I think the coaches are getting a lot better. I think I've been in some gyms where it's not, there's no coaches. They're just exercise leaders.
Yeah.
I know, like, later on some of the questions that I know you're gonna ask, we'll get into that a little bit more. Yeah, but yeah, that was sort of my first thing about coaching, was the Warrington. But I am still the only coach that's done every S&C job at Warrington with every team that they've had.
It's pretty impressive. And actually, speaking of which, I want to get into, because obviously you're the S&C coach for the women's team for Warrington. You've had quite a lot of success lately. I think they've just been promoted into the Premiership League. Super League, yeah. Now, one question I've got for you is obviously, what is the key difference that you find coaching women's teams and men's teams? So, like, there's an obvious physiological difference. That's not like a sexist question before anyone starts shooting down. Like, there's no denying there's a physiological.
No, there's.
But I'd also be interested to see what you're finding the differences in, like, mindset and approach as well. Not just the, like, key differences in the like how you.
Yeah. I think, I only spent 1 year with the men's first team under John Clark and Jake Batsford. So I learned a lot from them. I think with the women, it's terminology, first of all. Like, they had to get used to, obviously, when you completely lift, just from CrossFit mentality, because I'm coaching at a CrossFit as well, just using the term beast. I mean, I've had girls cry in the first few weeks when I called them a beast. And I think just the way that I have to talk to the girls sometimes, like the girls, obviously, with the lads, you can get involved in a lot of banter with the girls. Obviously, there's always that strict professional relationship, especially with the women's rugby team. The term women's should not be put in front of it. Because the banter they throw about is, they're an interesting bunch. I think there's an old adage someone told me once. They were saying it, women listen more. And I don't necessarily think that's true. I think a lot of women, since getting involved in Warrington, obviously we're in the League One and the Super League above, was where we wanted to get to. I think they've just never had any access to proper coaches. So when I did the year with the men's first team, they were obviously being coached by JC and Jake. They'd been coached by, most of them are internationals. So they've been coached off some of the best S&C coaches in the world. And I've done a few years with the under-19 to under-16s. I've done my UKSCA, my gym level 2 and 3, PT. But can I really teach them that much when it comes to squatting, benching, pull-up? Like, with those guys, it's more corrective exercise. Like, because if you've got a lot of players, for example, with shoulder injuries. So we spend all the time in the world doing our courses on our UKSCA, learning how to do proper power cleans, snatches, and you're never going to teach that to the men. So most of them wouldn't be able to get into that position. Whereas the women, most of them are fit and healthy. but most of them also have just never been coached. So they're able to absorb more information, which seems like they're listening more, but it's not. They've never had access to any form of coaching. And I think even the girls who we've signed, so we had a lot of success last year. We probably had the best squad on paper. Like, you look at some of the names of the girls who we had in that team. Like, realistically, after the first 2 or 3 games, it sort of hit me that, you know what, we should be pushing for the title here, because we've got the players. Yeah. We just need to actually get the results consistently. I think where we differed last year was just how fit we were. Right. And that'll come down to, like, I have a methodology which I use from a guy called Dan Baker in Australia. But I think other teams would last probably about 15, 20 minutes with us, but then our fitness would just blow teams away. And it was really positive, like in a couple of games where they were quite challenging. I remember we played Stanley, and Stanley, obviously their game plan, they must have seen video. They were like, look, we need to rough these guys up. And our girls were like, look, just give these like 15, 20 minutes and they'll blow out. And to hear our girls speak so positive about how high our fitness was. And after 15, 20 minutes, most teams would blow out. And I mean, some of our results, like 80-odd-0 in a lot of games. I think we went 4 or 5 games where we didn't concede a try. Right. Played in the final, I think we conceded 1 try. And even that it shouldn't have been a try, but it's...
Got to give him one, haven't you?
You've got to give him one. And the weirdest thing for me with the girls' team is I've got an Olympian and a girl who's never done anything before who just turned up. Yeah. So I've got a program for someone who can squat 170, yeah, and then someone who can't squat the body weight. So I'd say this definitely has been the most challenging role.
Welcome to coaching CrossFit, bro.
Yeah. But again, we have such limited time with them. So yeah, on a good week, you maybe get 45 minutes in the gym with them. So you're trying to write a program for 45 minutes to help everybody.
Yeah.
And obviously you don't want to spend just time with the girls who can't squat and let the girl who has a massive squat suffer because she's good at squatting. So he's trying to get a program together which encompasses everything.
It's also the interesting thing about sort of strength and conditioning, and it's the bit that I was always fascinated with when we covered it, is that, so you're dealing with professional sports people. Now, they've only got so much time in any given week to train, and obviously so much energy and so on and so forth. So it's a case of, well, how much of that time can I take away from them doing skill development, yeah, and actually get them fitter, faster, stronger? Do you know what I mean? So you're always kind of towing that line, aren't you? Like you just said then, you've got 45 minutes a week to develop a session for athletes that aren't almost of like the sort of same physical level. It's definitely a challenge.
Oh yeah, massively. And you're also you're answerable to the head coach, and it all depends on what he deems as being more valuable. Like the girls who've never played rugby before, because we had a lot of girls. I think we had over 50, 60 girls who turned up for trials. And then we took on a squad of just under 30, I think it was. And a lot had never played rugby. So he's got to then allocate time for skill development. And on the pitch at the end of the day, no one cares what you can bench press. Like everything comes down to skills. So then it's okay, so how much of the time are we going to spend on teaching the girls how to do bench? And is bench really important, or is press up? And we have a sort of set of exercises that we have to try and progress them through, and girls are at such different stages. So it was such a challenge trying to get added time off the head coach. And I think that the first few games we were playing, we were probably winning on fitness because we had individuals who could pull things out of the bag. So we already had a girl who played for England, a couple who played high-level rugby before. And they had moments of magic, but ultimately we could just outwork a team. And then
so off the back of that, the question to yourself, would you rather, let's say obviously apart from the team that you coach now, would you rather have a team that is the fittest or the most skilled? And let's say you've got a spectrum, yeah? So obviously you've got this really talented, skillful team, or you've got this really fit team that's absolutely hopeless. Which would you rather have? You can't have anywhere in the middle. It's a 1 or a 0.
Skillful or machines?
Yeah.
I mean, skill.
How does it? Because obviously that's what it kind of comes down to.
If you could give me one, so if I'd rather have a team of machines with a skilled hooker. So someone just to pass them the ball and just keep running and just smash your way through. Because ultimately, eventually their skill will drop.
Yeah.
And I think at uni, like our uni team, we didn't have masses of like rugby talent, but we just had some proper hard-working players.
Yeah.
And we got all the way to the final. We lost in a final, but we got there just because we were probably the fittest, strongest team in there.
Yeah.
And the women last year, like even on days when we weren't playing necessarily the best, we knew at the end of the day, if all else fails, we're gonna outwork them, and we're gonna make them tired. And after 20, 25 minutes in those games, like the other team's legs were gonna fall off and gaps were gonna appear. Yeah. And then those who weren't necessarily playing as well as what they probably would from the off. And it's really hard not to name like individuals just to like give them big head. There were certain girls in our team who could just find a gap and could find a moment of magic from nothing. But you know, you can't rely on those players every day. So the way the non-skilled girls were backing them up was just through hard work.
Yeah, it's interesting, like what you talk about there, because like for me, the way I look at that is like picking a skill or somebody who's got like the ability, like as a hard worker or whatever, is like designing a program for those people. It's the same as trying to design a program for somebody who wants to be good at the sport of CrossFit and somebody who wants to be good, who just wants to follow the methodology. Like how much time do you partition towards the skill? And again, that's always dependent upon the individual in itself, isn't it? So it's like if I've got somebody who can back squat 200 kg and snatch 130, like the time spent developing skills relative to those movements is a lot less than than somebody who can only back squat 100 kilograms and snatch 50. You know what I mean? Like it changes. Like you spend a lot more time developing certain skills, don't you? Which again, like I think is interesting to come from a sports analogy, as like it's easier to see when you look at it as in, am I developing somebody's ability to pass a rugby ball, or do I develop the ability to bench, and maybe even developing the ability to have more stable, stronger shoulders to be able to, you know what I mean? Like what's more relative? And it's because it must be hard for you as an S&C coach to sort of like, when you've got that big spectrum of people and people who, like you say, can pass, can throw, can do all the skills, but maybe need to actually for them to get better, they need to bench more. Do you know and bench is just an example. I'm not saying that's going to make throwing. Like, don't.
Everyone's going to be jumping on it. Is it really important to bench now? And I think the good thing for me is I think the girls bought into the way I am and I coach.
Right.
So I was setting them home programs, and the girls were sending me photos or videos where they were in the gym and they were doing the sessions. So it was really, really good. Obviously, I'm really fortunate. I've got Lee and Ben Westwood alongside me, and I'd say to them, look, as much as it is important to develop the skill side, like we still need to make sure these girls are fitter, faster, and stronger, because the ultimate goal was to get to Super League. Did we think we'd do it in that first season? I think when we were starting off, we wanted to compete and set a standard and set a platform. And after like 2-3 games in, we started to not just beat teams, but demolish them. Then we got a bit of a pasting. I think that was the best thing that could have ever happened to us. Once we took that pasting, the girls clicked as a team.
Right.
And then they just went on and they learned why it was important to be a team. Because I think before that, we probably relied on the individuals a bit too much. And then after that, they really all kicked in a gear, and that's when we went to that mad charge, and it was good.
So interestingly as well, obviously you find that you coach the girls in the gym, you coach them in our CrossFit gym, and obviously you're an advocate of CrossFit. You do CrossFit yourself. And I feel like I already know the answer to this, but I think you'll probably put it in better terms than I will. Can you explain why you don't use CrossFit specifically to train those girls, and to train your teams that you work with, and maybe like relying on what we've just said, kind of thing?
Well, when you sent me that beforehand, and I looked at it, and I thought, I'll go back to my time with first team during the GPP phase. is it unthinkable to do a version of CrossFit during that? No, like I remember doing some sessions with them where the coaches would jump in. And I know there's a big thing between some S&C coaches and, well, it's more S&C coaches towards CrossFit that they just don't like CrossFit. But like when you actually sit down and break it down, CrossFit's a word. Like that's all it is. It's a word. It's a methodology. And Olympic lifting, body weight movement. So in the general preparation phase, I've seen CrossFit style workouts done. I also know of a lot of first team people who do CrossFit, especially in the off season. I know a few men's first team S&C coaches who coach CrossFit or own their own CrossFit gyms and actually do really, really well from it all. I wouldn't do CrossFit in season. Like no one's ever doing Murph in season.
Yeah.
Like my main goal and the main goal of any S&C coach is to provide the head coach with as many fit players as possible. If I were to do Murph, and I'd say I probably made a mistake once with which age group was it? The under-19s. The manager, I was probably my third week in, told me to give them a bit of a tough session. So I thought, okay, I'm going 3 rep back squat every minute on the minute for 10 minutes, a high percentage. And seriously, on game day, the lads couldn't walk. We'd done that on Thursday. Saturday, the lads could not move. And that was obviously a year into the coaching. I was like, okay, CrossFit in season. Those style workouts, just no, not at all. Yeah. Well, again, I learned a lot from that. But CrossFit in season, it's two completely different things. I think the damage that's done during some WODs, like the ultimate goal of a rugby player is to win a rugby game. They're not trying to improve their Murph time. Yeah. They're not trying to get a sub 2 minute Fran. Like I need to use different movements, and I'm going to use elements of CrossFit. So they're going to snatch if they can. They're going to clean and jerk. They're going to do pull up. They're going to do all the same movements, but it's just a massively scaled down version. Yeah. And I think I was really surprised in my year with the first team men how little work they actually do in the gym in season, but it's more quality over quantity. Yeah. Whereas I know a lot of people who come into CrossFit at first as that sort of learned element where it's just get a lot of reps through them and let them make a few mistakes and keep training, keep trialing. And then that's where the good coaches come in.
At the end of the day as well, you got to look at the main term that I always think they use to describe it is specificity. Do you know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, what you're trying to achieve with them is to get them playing rugby and get them playing to a high standard or the highest standard as such. And when you talk about the fact that rugby players are going to be like going out on a Saturday, like you can't give them anything that's going to detract away from the performance. Do you know what I mean? So it does change how you train someone massively, doesn't it?
It's huge. And I remember doing a talk for a few people at a college on a week-to-week basis, and I said, like, on a perfect week, you think Sunday to Sunday, so you'll play Sunday, lads will be in on a Monday for recovery, day off Tuesday, weights Wednesday, day off Thursday, team run Friday, day off Saturday, game Sunday. Now that's perfect on paper. No one plays consistently Sunday to Sunday. So when you go in Sunday to Thursday and you're still trying to get in gym sessions and it's trying to work out what's the most important thing, like you say, specificity plays a huge part. And then it's also knowing which players can do which things, injuries picked up in games, coaches wanting to protect players, a bit cautious of doing some movements. It's a really interesting battle. I have it easier, or had it easier last year with the women's team because we knew we were Sunday to Sunday. Yeah. So I knew what we could do on Tuesday, what we could do Friday, and it was going to be fairly similar going all the way through, and just the level that we trained at. And again, the stuff I used from Dan Baker just helped me with sort of progressing the girls and pushing them on. And it was interesting.
Just to explain for those people that don't follow rugby and sports in general. When we talk Sunday to Sunday, we mean like you play a game on a Sunday and then you play down the following Sunday.
Yeah.
In the professional ranks, you'll tend to find you'll play on a Sunday and then your following game next week might be on TV, so it's on a Friday or a Saturday or a Thursday. So it basically fucks with your structure for the season and your programming.
Yeah, it's crazy how you're at the mercy of the league there, because if you're playing two of the top three and you're aiming for the title and you're playing them on a Sunday and a Thursday and they move it for TV purposes, then it can really hammer you. And we're going to have that if the league starts this year for the women.
Yeah, that'll be cool. Basically, that like I say, that's awesome. We've got a lot. To be fair, there's a lot more I want to speak to you about, but I know we're short on time. For the first thing that I want to go into just before we do our final 3 fun questions is when you talk about training for CrossFit and talk about training for a team sport, like we're using rugby as the main example because that's probably the one that me and you understand best. Poor Josh is sat over there going, "Fuck you, was it?" Fuck rugby. People, how do you think that people who train for CrossFit could learn from what we talked about just to do with the specificity of training for rugby?
Probably my most sort of asked question by coaches when I come into a CrossFit gym, and I always refer back to the documentary on Netflix, Froning, where Froning openly admits in the program he doesn't follow CrossFit. He follows structured programs. Everything I have to do has to be structured, and I have to be answerable to the head coach and say, right, we started pre-season here, we're now here. And you hear athletes all the time, like you look at the top CrossFitters, they will all have come. Matt Fraser would have followed an S&C program, like a structured program where his numbers were set at this, and he'll follow targets. Like I see when you guys are coaching now, and you're making people work to percentages. Like I'm answerable to, like I say, the head coach. The easiest one for me is our conditioning. So we'll start pre-season with our running grids. The girls started here, we finished here. They can see a clear end goal. Having that and buying into it, and I think sticking to it for some CrossFit athletes. I think a lot of people will get really excited by the thought of a 12-week program, and after week 4 they're like, I'm not seeing a PB, and you're like, you've just got to stick with the program, follow it. And then when you go into workouts, like the easiest one for me is my Grace time. I did Grace a few weeks ago, and the last time I actually did Grace and timed it, I think it was like 5 minutes. Did it the other week, and I think at that time 60 kilo was probably about 80% of my 1RM, whereas now 60 kilos like 50%. So my Grace time was so much faster because I've just followed the gym where I'm at now being coached. Like I've just followed his programming, and that's my big thing, is sticking to the program and just following the percentages and not quitting a program after X amount of weeks. My girls have no choice to follow it. Like they do it, they come in and they get told to do it, and they do it. They've got no other choice. Whereas people who do CrossFit will follow a program, or they'll buy a program off a coach, and then after a few weeks they'll sort of jib it off and not follow anything. Just follow the 12 weeks and understand what you actually get out of the following a 12-week program. And when you do that, and then you start PB and you do better at competitions, and I think that's the biggest thing, is just getting people to understand why following a program makes so much sense.
It's the thing that makes me laugh sometimes when you like somebody follows a program for 6-8 weeks or whatever, and they're like, and then they get to the end of it and they go, I didn't PB, and then they go, right, well, I'm going to buy a new program, and they go on to the new program. They start for a week, and they've got they do the test phase of their new week of program. They go, I PB'd everything, and you're like, yeah, because you know that old program that you've been following for 8 weeks, that's just worked. It just didn't work. You know what I mean? It's like
my soul, the amount of people that I see switching, and I see it on Facebook all the time because I've been involved with so many different CrossFit gyms. I've got a lot of friends on CrossFit gym, and they'll switch, and I'm not going to name all the different companies that sell them, but I see people switching between them all the time, and I'm like, just pick one coach, follow the program, and just keep working hard, just follow a structured program. and you're gonna benefit. And then when you come to do competitions, like numbers start like in my head. No, which was the one I was watching the other day. Actually, I was watching the fittest games with one Matt Fraser was on, and it's the one where they had the muscle ups and power cleans, and he talks about the numbers, and when he's talking about, I think it was like 240, it's getting right up there, like 95%. And the fact that he's able to reel off certain numbers, and in his head, he can break things down into percentages for what it is. So even him, at the level he's at, he's on a structured program.
Yeah. And
it's when you see people talk about weights in WODs as a percentage of what they're doing as a 1RM. So most things, even when I go into WODs now, like I'll do it, like you've seen me do it at the gym. I'll jump into a WOD, and especially if there's a rowing one. And like my new one is on the Echo bike. So I know like 20 calories on an Echo bike is a minute, and it's quite a comfortable thing. Whereas some people, it's quite a fast pace. But because I've done a program on the Echo bike for some of my athletes, when I see them in WODs, I'm like, okay, that's fairly standard.
You got some experience on it. And
yeah. So I think just following a program and sticking to it is what CrossFit athletes can learn.
To be fair, it's like we pay for a service called BoxMate for the members of our gym. And then when people come to me and I'm like, yeah, so this should be 50% of your max lift. And they go, but I don't know what that is. And unless they've been there like 6 months, and I'm like, yeah, you've probably never done that lift, for example. Like, and you might never have done a 1RM front squat in that time for whatever reason. I'm like, okay, well, what have you done? And they go, I don't know. I'm like, have you checked BoxMate? And they go, I've not logged it. And I'm like, well, that's what we pay for it for. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you log it, then when I'm giving you this advice, you're going to get a better workout and you're going to get it right. So like I say, awesome. I think that's really good for people to hear. I think it'll be useful for a lot of people training, whether it's CrossFit with us or whatever. One thing that I wanted to go into the final fun-free questions before we finish. And the first one, like I say, I know you're a big reader, is what is your number one book or movie recommendation that you would give to anybody?
Book is between two. So I'm going to go David Goggins' You Can't Hurt Me.
Yeah.
Or Magicians of the Gods by Graham Hancock. Two total different things. If you're looking for one for like training, David Goggins, Stay Hard. And if someone's looking for a little bit of history and a bit of education, Magicians of the Gods, unbelievable book. Right. My favourite film of all time, Remember the Titans.
Sick. We've had that one a couple of times now. So
I love Remember the Titans.
Gotta love Remember the Titans. I actually finally got Emma to watch Shawshank Redemption last night, and she was like, "Why have we never watched that before?" And I'm like, "Because you don't listen." But yeah, so awesome. Just because I think you're gonna have a good one. What's your favourite swear word?
Mine.
Yeah.
I think motherfucker.
Motherfucker.
Yeah. Just Samuel L. Jackson. I just every time I'm in the gym, I've been watching a lot of films, and every time I see Samuel L. Jackson, it's just that's the one that always makes me laugh. Because whenever you say it as well, you can't not say it in his voice as well. So I'm like, it just tickles me up. So, yeah, motherfucker.
And last but not least, I've lost the questions. There they are. Last but not least, if you could be in any other profession, or you could try your hand at any profession, what would it be?
I thought you were going to go with the other question, because the other one, we'll get to that in a second. If I could do anything else, architect.
Architect. Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. I like it. Go on then. The other question being who would you spend your time with?
No, mine was the other sport.
Oh, the other sport. Sorry, yeah, no, that's a good one.
What would I do? Just because I tried and failed at it, or didn't go as far as what I could, would be proper competitive stunt cheerleading.
Right. Okay.
Just because I've never been made to feel so weak in my life.
I really wish I had the time to go into that.
That's what I made. The people will be wondering why, but I've never, of all the sports I've had a little bit of strongman and stuff, powerlifting, but I've never felt as weak as doing that.
Amazing. Right. Well, we'll get you back on to find out more about that, because that I think people are wanting to know. So we'll leave people on a cliffhanger. So Matt, where can people find you if they want to know more about you?
So I'm in the Agoge members group.
Yeah.
Or just Matt Heaton on Facebook, or I think it's Heaton17 on Instagram.
Cool. Amazing. I'll link people up to that in the show notes so that people can get in touch if they want to know more. So thank you very much for coming on today, Matt. I really appreciate you taking some time.
Cheers for having me on.
And again, guys, thank you to everyone for joining us. Obviously, if you enjoyed this show, please like, share, comment, and review on iTunes if possible. 5-star review if you really enjoyed it. Again, we don't advertise this show, so the more that you guys share it, the more that you talk about it, the more people will benefit from it. And I think this particular podcast will be one that people can learn a lot from. So again, thank you very much for joining me, guys, and peace.
Take it easy.